Are you looking for a way to scale your short-term rental business and buy more properties? Well, co-hosting might be the right fit for you. Welcome to the Co-Host Coach podcast with Joe Roney. This episode of the Co-Host Coach is brought to you by Savvy STR Agents. If you're looking to buy a short-term rental, then contact the STR Savvy Agent team at savvy.realty.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Co-Host Coach. I am Joe Roney, and today we are going to discuss acquiring that first client. So, had more than one of you actually reach out and ask me to speak on this topic because, getting that first client to be a co-host for is the hardest one, right? And there's, a multitude of different ways that you can go out and get that first client. So, in previous episodes, we've talked about a few things, but we're going to kind of break it down just a little bit on some things that you can do. I will tell you, it can scale really quickly. Bill Faith just had his Superhost Sunday a few weeks ago, and he talked about how he had a person leave the STR Wealth Conference with 0 co-hosting properties, not knowing what he wants to do, and within 30 days had 13 co-host properties, all those potentially doing $100,000 or more. So, very, very doable. It depends on how aggressive you want to be. And it really comes down to sales, right? At the end of the day, to go out and acquire clients, you have to put your sales hat on and sell yourself, not your business, not your team, not what you're, trying to provide. You got to sell yourself, right? People want to do business with people. They don't want to do businesses with companies. They want to do business with you. And I'll share a couple of stories on my first couple of clients, but the first thing that I want you to really understand is that you have to build your brand and have confidence in who you are and what you're doing, and that you can do this for somebody else, right? And this is why in my mastermind, I require all the people in our mastermind to own their own short-term rental. Because if you don't, it's really hard. I'm not saying it's impossible. There's a lot of people out there that are crushing it that don't own short-term rentals, but it's really a lot easier to go to somebody who has that $500,000 or $1 million investment and get them to trust you to manage their property if you're already doing it, right? So you already have the will and the know-how, and you can even show them the results. That case study is such a big, big part. So we picked up 2 new properties just recently in the past month, and both of them are properties that have the potential to do $225 to maybe as much as $275,000 a year, and they're 5-bedroom, 5-bath golf front homes. And the clients that we're going to be working for, learned that we were managing, one next door, and we had the number 1 revenue producing short-term rental in Panama City Beach that is not on the beach, right? So, we were doing well over $200,000. Not many properties are doing that kind of revenue unless you're beachfront, and we were able to do it. So that case study alone made it really easy to say, well, I'm already doing this, right? So step number 1 is build your case study. Whether you are, self-managing in the Poconos or in California or just rural Missouri, it doesn't matter where you're co-hosting. You need to build your case study to show how you are outperforming the market, right? What are you doing to outperform the market? And, whether it be in your revenue management, in your design and setup, in your professional photos, whatever it may be, right? What are the different things that you're doing that a traditional property manager or another manager that they are using now may or may not be doing? That's the question, right? So, so you gotta build your case study, and that makes it easier to sell who you are and what you are doing, right? So there's a couple of different ways to go out and find your first client. And, step number 1, I mean, the easiest is referrals, right? If you want to get out, you're posting on social media, you're trying to become that person of interest in the market that you want to be a co-host in. So for me, when I wanted to become a co-host in Panama City Beach, I started posting about it. I started doing reels. I did TikToks. I did everything I could to try to get people to know who I am. And quite a few of my co-host clients saw me being very, very active on social media. And they reached out. I had a couple private messages, and I picked up at least three, maybe even four clients that way. Um, I know for sure I picked up three clients just because I was really active in social media. And I started doing monthly ownership meetups. We're actually doing one this evening for owners in Panama City Beach, where we're going to discuss the market, how it's been going, all that kind of stuff. And then started, like I said, posting in those local groups, being helpful. I wasn't selling myself. I'm not saying go to a Facebook group and say, "Hey, I'm Joe. I'd like to co-host your property." Blah 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 blah. Nobody cares. Nobody's going to read that post. That is not how you're going to get a property. Okay. What you're going to do is you're going to be people that say, "Hey, thinking about doing this. What do you think?" And you start sharing what you do and what works, and you start sharing what kind of results you're having. And you could even do a post and say, "Hey, how's everybody's year been? We were up 13% this year, and this is how we did it." And you'll get some people that DM you and have discussions about it. And some of these conversations are going to be useless conversations. They're going to be people that self manage, or they're happy with their property manager, but they just want to pick your brain, have that conversation. But you're looking for your first client, right? So you're going to have a little extra time. You're going to have to put a little extra effort into acquiring that first client. So, so that's step number one, in my opinion. Become that person of interest, right? Step number two: get on AirDNA or get on Price Labs maps, or use STRIQ or any data source that you like, and start searching for properties in your area. Decide what your avatar is. What is the type of property you want to manage? Now, everybody wants to say, "Oh, I want to manage the $200,000 houses." If you don't have a co-host property, they're probably not going to hire you for that $200,000 a year property right away, right? You're going to need to build a little bit of a case study to get there. Your first property, I'm not saying you got to take a $40,000 or $50,000 property, but you might. You might need that one that's only going to make you $8,000 or $10,000 a year right off the bat to be able to do this, right? So what you want to do, is obviously you want to get your first property, and you're going to go to AirDNA, you're going to go to these different data platforms, and you're going to look at their revenue numbers, right? So I know for me in Panama City Beach, 4 and 5 bedroom homes is what I kind of have geared towards. And I'm going to AirDNA and I'm looking at only 4 and 5 bedroom homes in the map view. And then I'm hovering them and I'm looking at what their revenue is. And, obviously you can put up, select an AirDNA professionally managed only. So it's only pulling those up. Or STRIQ, you can say, okay, show me the bottom 50 properties, and then you can go to each one of them and see if they're self-managing, see if they've got a property manager, whatever it may be. Okay, so you're going to go to those and you're going to find the properties that are not doing the revenue that you think they could be doing. Now, some of these could be owners that, use it a lot. So you want to put those rule sets in there, like more than 250 days available, or 300 days available, right? If they stay in it 6 months a year, it's going to be low revenue because they stay in it 6 months a year. So you want to make sure you check the amount of days that it's available. Make sure you check, how many 5-star reviews. It's not a brand new property. I'm not saying you're not going to get a brand new property, but if you have someone that only has 1 or 2 reviews, more than likely they either A, just started with their property manager, or B, it's a brand new listing and they're just getting going. They're probably not going to make a change right away. Probably not worth it for you to chase your tail on something like that. But you're looking for ones that maybe have some low rating reviews, low revenue, whatever it may be. Once you get your listings and you know what you're going, and I will tell you, do this and try to get 40, 50, maybe even 100, depending on your market, but get more than one, right? 10 to 15, maybe 20. And then from that, you're going to take it. And there is a link that you can do to watch a YouTube to actually use the Airbnb link to find the address. I will put that link in the bio. If it doesn't operate right, send me a DM and I will send it to you. Learned it from Patrick Switek at the co-host retreat a couple months ago, and it definitely is a game changer to be able to pull up the addresses for the Airbnb link so you can find the owners, because then you're going to either do it yourself or you're going to hire a skip tracer to say, "Hey, here's the addresses. Give me the names, give me the phone numbers, give me the emails, give me everything you can on these clients." And then from there, you're gonna, there's a couple different ways you can do it. There's the cold calling route. I will tell you that my very first two that I got on my own, besides a referral, I went the cold call route, and I just picked up the phone and said, "Hey, I'm Joe. I own and manage vacation rentals. I have one right down the street from where you're at. And I was looking at your listing and, I see some opportunity there." Or I called them up and said, "Hey, I just bought a new short term rental and, I'm kind of talking to some different property managers. How do you like your manager?" And I'll use this one as an example. So I actually did this, and I still have this client to this day. So I called him up and I said, "Hey, my name's Joe. I just bought a short term rental. I'm about a block away from your house, and I'm just wanted to find out and see how your property's doing and how you like your property manager." And the client, who's my client now, is like, "Well," he's like, "I really thought we've owned this for a couple of years. I really thought we were going to do a little bit more revenue than what we're doing. And, but it's going okay." And I'd be like, "Well, I said, this is what we're doing. You have a 4-bedroom, 3-bath house that can see the ocean, and you're at 35,000. I have a 2-bedroom and we're doing like 65, right? And we're a block further from the beach with no views." And he's like, "Oh, wow, really? You're doing that kind of revenue?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And so kind of open the discussion. I didn't go in and start selling right away. I did ask him how he liked his property manager, and in the conversation, he ended up saying he really was fed up with his property manager because every time he sent an email to talk to the manager because something he was frustrated with or something that they noticed wasn't right, or just to ask questions about bookings, it'd be like 2 weeks for him to get an answer. So, for that particular client, and had nothing to do with him wanting to make more revenue. That was the bonus for him, is that he's making more money today. The bonus for him was he had my personal cell phone number, and I said, if I were to manage your property and you email me because you're having a problem with something, I'm going to be offended. Like, I just want you to shoot me a text. Now that doesn't mean text me on you know, every little issue. We have a process to send me an email or send me a message on certain things, and we'll handle it as soon as we possibly can. Usually within 8 to 12 hours, sometimes 24. But they also my owners also have my cell phone number, and I'm usually in a group text if there's an ownership group, and I'm okay with that. And they don't abuse it. They don't shoot me messages all the time, and I have that personal connection with them. So, um, for this particular client, that's what got him to say yes. He was fed up that he couldn't ever talk to the property manager. So, another client that I talked to, they had used the same manager for 10 years and they weren't making any money and the revenue had been going down. So for them, the revenue was a big part. And of course, we had to discuss what needed to be done to the property to hit those revenue goals because, as you guys know, my wife and I, we are always doing new designs. We're always upgrading properties and updating them and seeing what we could do. So that was one of the things that we did, is talk to them about what kind of budget they have, and you know showed them kind of an ROI to say, "Hey, you know what, you're doing $40,000 now. I think we can do $70,000 in this house. I need you to spend about 8,000 to get there." And which is what we ended up getting for that property. I think it was 7,500 bucks, whatever it was. It was one of our first ones, and we mostly did the work for free because we wanted to get our foot in the door. We were trying to grow a co-hosting business. So when we started this in the beginning, we did these redesigns for practically nothing in the first couple. But my wife wanted to get into the design space. We wanted to show people what we can do. And we did a lot of them, a lot of the work. I'm not going to say for free, but a 4-day weekend and we only make $1,000 as a couple is not a lot of money, right? 1,500 bucks, whatever it may be. Today we're charging significantly more, and we've earned that because we've done 10 or 12 of these now just over the last couple of years. Um, so acquiring that first client, that's one way to do it. Go through, do the cold calling. If you get their cell phone number, go in front of their house, take a selfie, shoot them a text message, say, "Hey, I'm over at your short-term rental. I got one right down the road. Really like your property. I'd love to talk to you about, you know, how it's doing." You're going to get their attention by having a selfie in front of their house, right? And you could do that via email, you could do that via text, whatever it may be, but you definitely want to do that. Another a couple different ways to go out after and get your first property, to get your first co-host client. Like I said, we're talking about social media, being very active, making sure people know what you're doing, going out and cold calling, finding the properties that you want, and going after it that way. Option number 3, obviously, you can use, Facebook ads. Go online and create yourself a YouTube video that talks about you, talks about your market, talks about your business. Cut that up, put that in some reels, put it in some TikToks, put it in some different strategies in your stories, and grow your brand. Continue to grow your brand. So I actually was part of a mastermind, and I did the podcast here. I've told you before with Adam McChesney with the Builders of Authority, and he taught me to grow my brand and build my brand on who I am. Because, like I said, people want to do business with people. They don't want to do business with businesses. They want to do business with people. And if you can make that personal connection with anybody, you're going to win. Again, this is where your salesman hat comes in, right? As a salesperson, there's a lot of different ways to sell. You're not selling to, like, we're not talking used car salesman type stuff, but you still have to say and provide the right details and the right things to sell yourself and sell what you're doing, and instilling, making sure that they have confidence in you, making sure that they see how excited you are about it. All of that is going to play a part. If you're just calling somebody up and saying, "Hey, Mike, hey, I got a property down the road. I saw your property's not doing well. And man, it just, I think I can make you a lot more money if you switch over to me." Like that's not the way you're selling. Like, you got to ask questions and get them to have a discussion. The longer of a discussion you can have, 20, 30, 40 minutes, the more trust they're going to have in you, and it's going to be easier to make that transition down the road and do that. So acquiring your first property is one of the hardest parts. Once you get that first one, I'm telling you, the next ones come so much easier, so much quicker. But we are, as we discussed a couple weeks ago, we are in official co-host acquiring season. This is the co-host acquiring season right now. So people just came out of the busy summer months, and in most markets, I was just listening to a podcast with the head of Air DNA, and he was saying, occupancy was down like 1.5% nationwide, and ADRs were down a little bit, nationwide. That doesn't mean your specific property was. Like I said, I have of the 11 properties we manage this year, 10 of them are having increases through the month of July, but that doesn't mean there were areas in the KPIs that weren't down a little bit. So nationwide, though, traveling was down. International travel into the United States was down 5% this year. That's a huge number. So, people are probably a little bit frustrated. They're wondering, what does 2026 look like? And they're a little bit more inclined right now to make that change, right? They're a little bit more inclined to say, you know what? Keep doing the same thing over and over and over, expecting a different result. Definition of insanity, and I'm going insane, and it's time to make that change. So you want to make sure you're front and center. You're right out there in front of them. Mail some handwritten letters. That's another great tactic that you can do. Create some letters. I'm not saying handwrite the whole letter. You can type the letter, handwrite the envelope, put it on a regular envelope, put your return address on it, write out their name and address. more people are inclined to look at mail if it's a handwritten address than, putting a label on it and putting your business name on the top left corner than opening it if it just says, "Oh, this is from Joe Roney. I don't know who that is. What is this?" Right? They're going to at least open it up and take a look at it at that point instead of just throwing it in the trash, right? So, a lot of us, we get a lot of junk mail. Just came back from PCB being down there for 2 weeks and my mailbox was full. Ooh, now I did it. My mailbox was full and I uh, you know, had to go in and, empty it. And it was 80% junk mail and I threw away most of it. But anything that either looked like a bill, unfortunately, or handwritten to me, I opened it up. So yeah, mail letters to those owners. And those letters can be an intro to you and what you're doing. And you might even throw a couple pictures of your property or something you've done with your design, whatever it may be. So these are all different ways for you to acquire your first co-hosting property. In my mastermind program, training program, we kind of dive deep into this with a little bit more of a how to get into the nuts and bolts of how to pull up those properties. So happy to share that with you. So if you're interested in something like that, just send me a DM. Love to be able to help people get into this business and make their businesses scale and grow because it can be a life changing business. So that's this week's episode on acquiring your first property. Like I said, once you get that first one, the next ones come a lot easier. Until then, continue to build your brand, continue to grow. Don't be average. You got to stand out. Till next time, see you then.